Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today this is the first sound design with Sytrus. We're going to talk about the sub bass. Now, you may think this is a simple concept. If you understand the sub bass, then great. Skip to the next video. But in this series, we're going to cover patch creation with Sytrus. I expect you to have watched, or at least have the knowledge of Sytrus from the ground up, and also have watched the Learn FM series, because I've made those so that I could now approach things like this. So we're going to go through a variety of different sounds, and we're going to make them with Sytrus. And Sytrus is sort of a scary, powerful synthesizer. Like in the ground up series, I mean, you go over all the controls and stuff, but here we're going to sort of see some of the ridiculousness and also the intuitiveness of a lot of this stuff. So first, we're going to start off with the most simple of simple. It is the sub bass. So if you don't know what a sub bass is, a sub bass is a low tone, a really low tone, meant to reinforce the bass of your track. So this is used all the time. Sometimes it'll be called separate subs, and it'll just be layered in there as a layer to it. So okay, let's talk about like why would I want to use the sub bass. So right off the bat, just so you know, and if you don't have speakers that can produce really low tones like 60, 70 hertz, then you're gonna have some issues. So even down into the 30 range where like the kick resides, sometimes kicks, their supplementary tone is a sub bass, and the sub bass will come in to supplement the kick. So it'll turn on when the kick turns on. So the sub bass is an extraordinarily useful tool for making your stuff sound, really big and larger than life. But if you're mixing on monitors that are really tiny, then it's not going to work out for you, because you won't be able to hear it, and you'll get unusual amounts of sub bass in some parts, and it's just a whole mess. So it's really easy to do in Harmony. So we start off, I'm always going to start in default, or at least I'm going to try, unless I've created something beforehand, which will happen. And you just take it down an octave. It's even easier than Harmor. Like Harmor actually is a little involved to get something like this, but here it's as easy as it's almost done for you. So that's the sub bass. Because this works on a ratio principle, you're going to have to know what range you're going to be playing in, because sometimes your sub bass will be 1, other times it'll be 0.25, depending on if you want to use it in Sytrus. So we're going to talk a little bit about the idea of a sub bass, but let's give a practical example of it. So I have this string chord progression all set up right here. Let me turn the volume down a little bit, and this is what it sounds like. And so in a track, I might play that once as like an introductory statement. Like people say, oh, and then to make it really big and, epic and just really sing, I'm going to layer in a sub bass. So I'm going to make this one unique. And I'm going to go to my Sytrus patch. It comes up as default now. It doesn't come up as Sytrus. I find that really interesting. I wonder if I switch patches, will it change the name of that? That would be pretty cool if it did that. I haven't checked it. So I'm just going to go ahead and write out the bass line on top of it, because it's just easier for me, instead of thinking about music theory during a sound design tutorial. Okay, so we're going to bring it down, maybe even lower. Maybe it's too low. That's sub bass territory. So, okay, you might find other notes to be too low. So on these ones, I'll bring them up an octave. And it's sort of the resolution right there, so I'll get away with it a little bit. So now, after they finish it and they come in on the second recap, they'll hear it like big, and I probably add in a few more parts, but it's just too, yeah, it's too low. Let's bring it up an octave. Okay. So you see, it gets there's quite a bit more space. Now, the sub bass, I am playing, this should be an F. I do have to think of a little bit of theory. So if you're not familiar with music theory, sound design is kind of like really tiny music theory. So in music theory, when you make a chord, there are these different inversions, and all it means is in a chord, you like using 3 notes for a chord, right? And so you might have one note on top of the other ones. Well, whatever the lowest note is, that's going to determine the inversion. So if you have like notes, you don't need to know any, just follow me, okay? Even if you don't know music theory. So if you've got a chord that's got the notes C, E, and G in it, let's say C is the bottom note. So on the piano, you hit it, that's the lowest note. Then you have an E, and then you have a G. If you move that C up an octave, and so now it's E, G, C. So right here, C, E, G. Well, let's say that you do this instead. So now the E is in the bass, ignoring all this crap down here. The E is in the bass. Now this is called the first inversion. And then if you do it again, you get the second inversion. And then you get back to where C is in the bass. And this is just called the root position. So if you had 4 notes, you could get a third inversion. 5 notes, you get a fifth inversion, things like that. So it continues on. But what's interesting, this really changes the way the chord sounds. Like, let me really quick show you, because it's really important to understand when you get into sound design and sub bass and fundamentals and all this junk. So here we have our chord. Okay, now let's do this and see how different it sounds. It sounds very, very, very different. There's all sorts of things that come into play here in harmony and on all sorts of weirdness that I'm not going to talk about in this video. But the idea is, though, what if we have a C up here, but then we have a C way down here? So we have a really low C. That low C acts as, so that determines the inversion. This low C says, nope, I don't give a freaking crap if a C's over here. What's going on above me? I am the lowest note. This is the kind of tone you're going to get out of me. And it's used, of course, there's all sorts of weird things when you mess with the middle stuff. But that's like a general, one of the basic rules you learn right off the bat when you're getting into music theory is the lowest note. So your fundamental, your sub bass is going to be your lowest tone. And so as your lowest tone, it's going to determine for a large part about the notes you're going to hear. So if you're putting down notes that aren't part of the fundamental of the chord, that aren't the lowest note in the chord, it's going to sound weird. Not necessarily bad. And it will, if you do know what you're doing, then it can sound even quite interesting. But you're going to want to have it play the fundamental. So before I played it, it sounded a little funky. I had this one. So I have a C, and over here, this is a B, E, G. I'm just going to do a sort of rising. I'll put a G there. This is a little bit of a weird situation. And then this one goes to a C chord, and then this one's an A. So that's why the A sounded so nice. And on these two, I want these to be up an octave, and I want this to be an F again. And this is another one of those weird ones. I'm going to put a G, D, and then I'll even make the D slide. Whoops. Let's do something like this. No, let's leave it. I'm going to have a D here, and I'm going to slide it. I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to slide it to the A. A rather fast slide. Maybe it won't sound that great. But here it is now with the correct positions. That one's wrong. So these could be very powerful weapons for you. Now, I got these two wrong, but I'm not sweating it because I was going pretty quick. It's a pretty simple thing. It's a C7, so I guess I could put a C here. It should still sound fine. Just have a C sing through that whole part. Yeah, a C works fine. It kind of takes away from the 7th tension and release, though, a little bit. Maybe if we did something like this. Yeah, I liked the way it was before, and that's just straight wrong. But anyways, you can see the importance, because if I have this F down on like an A, there's an A in the chord, it still works, right? But no, sounds weird. If we go to the F, not necessarily bad or wrong, you might even like it, but it's just kind of weird. So that's the F, and there's a C. We have an option of a C. So that sounds even weirder than the A. So C is the best. I mean, F is the best. F is the best one. All right, so now let's talk about a different facet of the sub bass. There's one other facet that this is great for, and that is the subject of putting it in there subtly. Some people, like in dubstep, you want to have your sub bass sort of sing out, but when you have all your rips going on, sub bass can eat your room for your other stuff. So the louder your sub bass is, it'll just push your other crap out of the way. Like, it will just take up so much room in your mix. It's insane how much room it can take. I have a project that I would open if it didn't take like 10 minutes to open, and I had that exact problem. When you get to a point where you want to make something so big and epic, so you put in this big fat sub bass, and then it just all of a sudden everything gets quieter, and the sub bass is there, but it sounds kind of weird. It's just like there's like this weird hole in your mix, like everything's been squashed by this sub bass, and so it's really kind of tricky mixing a sub bass in. So what some people will do is they'll do it a little more subtly, and Sytrus is fantastic for doing subtle movements like this. So I'm going to create a really fast bass. So I'm going to just do something like this. I know I'm not explaining this because we're going to do all sorts of bass design later, and it's super simple FM. All I did was link the modulator X. So I'm saying basically 1 becomes independent of the modulation from 2 when I move this knob. So not that crazy. And let's go to piano roll. Let's add in a note. I'm going to play a rather low note. It's still a little high. These things are always so loud. Okay. I'll probably fix it in video in my post when I edit this. But okay, so here it is, and it's a low note. I'm going to get rid of these. So here I'm going to play a rhythm automating X. So whoops. Okay, so I'm going to do something like this. Do something. This isn't going to, it's going to be a strange rhythm. Something simple. And I'm going to turn it off smoothing. So it sounds like this. Now, okay, that sounds really great. Now, what if I wanted to add a sub bass? So we're going to talk about this. So you could go to operator 6 and put it out, and then you could make it at a 1. Why do I choose 1? Some people choose 0.25, some people choose 0.5. Well, it's a ratio. So it depends on what notes you're playing. I'm already playing some pretty low notes. If I choose a ratio of 0.25, the note's going to be outside of hearing range. It's going to be way, way, way too low. 1 is already pretty low. So yeah. So if we could probably leave it on a 2 and it'd still come out as a sub bass. Let's really quick hear it. Yeah, I can kind of like, let's really quick check 2. See, you can hear it much better there, but you're going to want to be sensitive to whatever this is. I'm playing an A2. So if we opened up our previous harmor, and this is already on a thing of 1, and if I were to go hit an A2 on the keyboard, you see, like, that's just going to be, that's like for sub bass, that's going to create more of a mess than reinforce anything. So we were playing this note, which is pretty okay. And what ratio do we have it on? 1. So I might leave it on 1. But it's a great way to add it to your sound design, so you don't even have to layer it in. It's already there, like poof, there. And it'll reinforce your stuff when you master it and mix it and stuff. It'll already be there. You'd have to be aware that it's in your plugin. So if you want to change the level of the sub bass, you'd have to come in here and move that around. But as you can see, it's a much more subtle way to do things, and it's something that Sytrus excels at, unless you're using all 6 oscillators, which I have done. And in that case, if you do happen to use all of them, you can just open up another Sytrus, just a really quick FL type thing. Sytrus is down here. My plugins are always changing where they're at because I'm always loading new plugins, and so it shifts this whole list around. And what you can do is you can add a layer. So if you don't know where to get, it's right there. It's underneath layer. It's underneath miscellaneous. So layer, what it allows you to do. So let's say I've used all 6 oscillators on this for whatever reason. I've just gone insane. I can select my layer. I can hold down Shift and select these, make them green. I believe it's called the MIDI select. I don't know. You click Set Children. Now, whenever I play it, it'll play them both for me. And then I could just make this one my sub bass, and I essentially now have a 12 operators. I can't do FM between them, but I essentially have 12 operators to work with on one sound, which is kind of ridiculous. So I come here, put it as a 1, and play my sound now. I'd have to move this over to my layer sound, though. So you could still play them as individual instruments, and then if you want them all together, you can create a layer and make your life easy and just play them all at the same time. So, whoops, I didn't want to rename it. I just want to go to the piano roll. So now, It's a separate thing. And there's two, I believe I left the sub bass in on this one. So very interesting type deal. So if you have any questions about this, let me know. I hope I gave you some revelation or new light on the sub bass. I know this is a pretty simple sound, so I wanted to go over its application more than anything. If you have any questions again, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.